The Changeover is back with another episode. This week,
I don't have clicks, and it's therefore harder to track conversions, and I can't attribute which of my efforts are working and which are not. How do I know what to do more of, what to do less of?
About 2/3 of Google searches end without a click, right? Which means people are just staying or they're ending their search journey right there on the Google SERP. And of the traffic or of the clicks that do occur, I think it's nearly a quarter or a third goes to a Google-owned property like YouTube, Google Maps, that sort of thing. That is why we need to do the zero-click marketing, because we can't be dependent on these clicks happening anymore.
Welcome back to the ChangeOver Podcast. I'm Chelsea Drusch of Wider Group. Today, we're unpacking what marketing leaders need to understand as attribution breaks down and visibility moves off-site. Joining me is Amanda Natividad, VP of Marketing at SparkToro, and one of the clearest voices on zero-click marketing and modern buyer behavior. Today, I am joined by the brilliant woman, if I do say so myself, who has put words to a phenomenon I think we've all been feeling in marketing for years: zero-click marketing. We are going to get into all the ins and outs of what we mean when we say that and what we should do about it. But for now, I'd like to introduce Amanda Natividad, the VP of Marketing at SparkToro. Amanda, thank you for joining us. Could you start us off by just telling the audience a little bit about yourself, your background, and then get us right into what zero-click marketing means?
Yes, thank you so much, Chelsea. You know what? I will say for a long time in my marketing career, I was just like a part of the pack marketer. You know, marketing manager, senior manager, was helping to lead teams, but very much the boots on the ground person doing the work. I was doing this for 10 years, 11 years before I really started thinking about that kind of personal brand, that sort of audience building stuff that always feels kind of yucky to say, but it's what it is. And so I started posting about my thoughts, my experiences in marketing. This was on Twitter, and I'm saying Twitter because that's when it was Twitter, right? This was
at the time.
Yeah, at the time. This was almost 6 years ago. And much to my surprise, my threads started to go viral. And from there, my audience grew pretty quickly. I went from something like 1,000 to 100,000 followers on Twitter in a year and a half or so.
Wow.
And yeah, no paid reach, nothing like that. That was just through organic, posting on topic, marketing and content posts, and really growing from there. So I say this, not to flex or whatever, right? But to provide that context for people that I think some people I might have looked like I came out of nowhere or overnight success, that kind of thing. But, I was the content marketing manager, writing the blog posts, doing all the things behind the scenes for 10 plus years before I started really putting effort into, just being actually the face of my own content, so to speak.
It's really helpful to hear that background because you have been in the trenches and you do have that relatability to help us take some of the more higher level strategy thoughts that you have been so known for as of late and be able to take them and apply them and ground them into tactics. And here's what you can actually do about this thing I've been observing at scale. So I actually think it's really helpful to hear that background.
And I appreciate that, things I've been observing at scale, because that's really what it was, right? I didn't start creating this content or posting about my takes based on I did all the work and I'd analyzed all the things, so I know everything. It was, hey, I scored this PR win for a D2C company that I worked for. We got over 1,000 customers. Here's how I did it. And then I walked people through that step by step. So it wasn't hey, this is how you do PR and I'm an expert, everyone. It was, here's how I scored this big win, and walk people through very tactically on the steps. And I think that's important because I really want to show people hey, I'm doing the work. I've done the work. Here's how I did it. Maybe if you did something similar, it will work, or maybe it won't. And I always tell people, if it doesn't work, please tell me. tell me what you did and share it with me. And I just say that I think it's important, especially now more than ever, and we'll get into this, I'm sure, in this age of AI slop, right, where anybody can say anything, anybody can prompt ChatGPT to say like, hey, give me a post that will explain this thing and make me look smart. I think it's more important than ever that we as, the people creating content, right, we creators really show the work, right? Really dig into our experience and prove that we know what we're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. That makes a ton of sense to me. I'm going to make an assumption here and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the combination of what you were seeing in one-to-one scenarios as a practitioner was then able to be amplified at scale through a lot of what's being done at SparkToro.
A lot of what I've been trying to do is kind of work backwards from outcomes that either I've been able to, create, or outcomes that I've been close to and know all the details about. So trying to work backwards and trying to provide frameworks or ways of thinking for people so that they can apply it to their own businesses.
Yeah, can you explain, just for those of us in the audience here who are not familiar, we at Wider are SparkToro power users. We use it for audience intelligence on behalf of all of our clients, but could you give a little background on the tool and kind of connect those dots for everybody on how the insights that you've seen on the ground and then what SparkToro is able to do can help you kind of project that at scale and say, just because, I'm seeing this, I can also tell you that you're likely encountering it too, and how SparkToro fits into that equation?
I mean, SparkToro is a tool that helps you do audience research. I think that audience research is how we do good marketing. I always want to say, like, we're a tool that helps you do better marketing. And I still feel like that's too abstract for people, or people might hear that and think, what do you mean better marketing? Like, what kind of marketing? What's better? And I'm like, it is that we provide you the data, the insights to help you know where your audience is hanging out online, like the things they pay attention to. We'll show you the subreddits that they hang out in, the YouTube channels that they subscribe to, so that you know where to do marketing where they already are, and so that you know what your audience is consuming, so you can kind of join that narrative that's in their heads. You could do audience research manually, right? This could be done through some combination of like surveys, customer interviews, social listening, website analytics, right? It's these things kind of combined that help you learn more about your audience so that you can do things like create content that resonates better, right? You can do things like reduce your customer acquisition cost because you are better targeting your ads, right? Those are things that help you do better marketing. And so SparkToro helps you do that audience research very quickly, very accurately, and at scale.
Actually, one of the ways that we think about it here is that it takes your ability to harness best practices and make them your best practices. So we like to talk about, best practices are silly almost in a way, because that you're literally saying this is something that works for everybody. You can't possibly be taking into account the context of your specific audience and their nuances if you're saying this is a thing that works for everybody. So that's kind of the mechanism that we've been thinking about SparkToro and audience intelligence around, is that it's taking what we know is a good thing from a marketing philosophy perspective and making sure we're really honing it to match the scenario in which we are trying to apply it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Can you bring us back for a moment to the zero-click marketing of it all? And can you give us a really quick primer on when you say zero-click marketing, for the uninitiated of us, what does that mean?
Yes. So zero-click marketing is doing marketing where your audience is in their platform of choice, communicating to them in a way that they get all the standalone value from you right where they are, where there's no need to click, right? Where clicking is additive to their experience, right? Clicking to learn more helps them improve their understanding, but without the click, that they understand that where it is and then within that context. So that's one piece of it, right? That's how you do it. But the other piece is, why do we need to do this, right? And this is where it gets not tricky. It's just there's a lot of data on this now, right? Where the platforms, and I'm saying the platforms like ChatGPT, Google, all the social networks, the platforms are incentivized to keep us in them, right? Like ChatGPT, it wants you to keep prompting it to stay in the app, right? That's why it said you ask it about a marketing thing and it goes and it ends with, as next steps, I can draft you a framework or I can sketch out a slide for you. Just say the word, right? And it's tempting. It is. I mean, I'm not saying it's not good. It's not user friendly, right? It's tempting to stay in it and keep prompting it. Just like with Google, right? You can Google something, you get the AI overview. The answer is usually there. The answer is sometimes right. It's sometimes wrong. You get all these like little snippets and summaries where, unless you're looking for the actual website of something, you can usually just stay within Google. And we know now, right? We've done the research at SparkToro. Other companies have done similar research where about 2/3 of Google searches end without a click, right? Which means people are just staying or they're ending their search journey right there on the Google SERP. Mm-hmm. And of the traffic or of the clicks that do occur, I think it's nearly a quarter or a third. We'll say a quarter, be conservative. About a quarter goes to a Google-owned property like YouTube, Google Maps, that sort of thing. That is why we need to do the zero-click marketing, because we can't be dependent on these clicks happening anymore.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. From your perspective, do you feel like the advent of zero-click marketing was driven more by the technology change behind it or the buyer behavior change behind it?
You know, I wonder about that too. Like the chicken or egg question. Mm-hmm. I don't know. When you're using these tools just as a user, just a casual user, it's a better user experience to stay on the platform, right? Like it is. Like you don't scroll through LinkedIn or Threads in hopes of leaving the platform, right? You're going on LinkedIn because maybe you want to see what your industry peers and colleagues are up to, what they're talking about, right? You're kind of going there for the water cooler. I think what's frustrating is the fact that these platforms so push people to stay on platform that creators have had to kind of jump through hoops to do like link below in the comments, link in bio, you know where to find the link, and kind of trying to gamify all these things. And I'm saying this as someone who does it too, right? I'm not saying everyone else is doing it and I'm not. I'm doing it too. And it's frustrating because ultimately what we are trying to do is like, I just want people to see the content that I'm producing because I think it's helpful. You know, like it's not like I'm not trying to get people to my pyramid scheme, you know. I'm trying to get them to this blog post that I worked really hard on and spent 8 hours writing and editing. Like that sucks, right? But that being said, I do think it's a combination, right? I don't know what the answer is, but I do think it's a little bit of the platforms have trained us and we've trained the platforms.
Yeah, it does feel like a vicious cycle.
Yeah, right? Because sometimes it is better, right? You're Googling Paul Rudd's age. You don't really need his entire like filmography.
It's like when you want a recipe and it's like, can you please just tell me the recipe? I don't need to know about your grandma's homestead in the middle of the Midwest. Like, what are we doing?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Or maybe I want a couple like ingredient notes, but like, you know, maybe just not more than 50 extra words.
Yeah, for sure. I want to talk a little bit about what I feel like is the panic conclusion that is drawn as soon as marketers start to really understand what this reality means for them. And that has to do with attribution. And I don't want to get hung up in straight up the measurement of it all, but attribution from the standpoint of decision making. If I don't have clicks, and it's therefore harder to track conversions, and I can't attribute which of my efforts are working and which are not, how do I know what to do more of, what to do less of? Can you talk a little bit about what you've learned around attribution in a zero-click marketing world and what we've maybe lost that we've grown accustomed to and what we should start thinking about differently?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked about this. So with the attribution problem, it's a number of things at play here, right? We have the platforms that are hoarding traffic. I'm going to look at some slides here, like some slides that I made. And I should be able to send you this later for show notes, but like organic reach is down, right? 2/3 of Google searches end without a click. If we look at things like mobile search, organic clicks have been, are down almost 20%. If you look at Facebook organic over the past like 10, 15 years, 13 years ago, it was like 16%. Now it's like under 3%, right? Same with Instagram. Same with even just self-reporting. Like marketers have self-reported organic reach is down by about 43%, right? So we have been seeing this happening over the years. Organic reach being down across the platforms. There's this issue of dark social, right? Like we have platforms hiding whole referral strings so that traffic coming in is marked as direct, right? So we've done this research over at SparkToro, and I'm going to pull up some of these stats. So we ran this experiment to measure this, and we found that the networks that are hiding 100% of this referral data are TikTok, WhatsApp, Discord, Mastodon, Slack, right? And I can understand, right? You get a link from Slack, that's not going to be shown as social referral traffic. However, there should be some kind of attribution, right? Because that's not direct traffic. It's someone who clicked on a link and then went to the website. TikTok is a social network. 100% of that social referral data is not showing up. That's a big problem, right? And so if you are doing when you have this like full stack marketing strategy, right, where you have like social stuff, you have, your ads running, more of your traffic is going to be shown as direct. And if you're trying to make decisions like where you're going to invest in things based on how much traffic you're getting, you're not going to be able to make those decisions correctly. Even when we look at our data in SparkToro, meaning like SparkToro's own like Google Analytics, it'll show that our direct traffic is something like 77 or 80%. And we have like, a couple 100,000 visitors to our website. So like really 80,000 people know to go to sparktoro.com. Like that's not true. Right. And that's frustrating, right? We can't make decisions, let alone like big investments based on that stuff when it's wrong.
What is your advice today for the manager, even the director who is getting asked by people who aren't in the weeds as much as we are to understand exactly what you're just explaining, and they want to be able to justify, if I give you $400,000 for the year, I need you to be able to tell me I got this ROI from that, and it was because of these things. I think we have historically, and this is probably a whole other can of worms, but I think we've tricked ourselves historically that used to be achievable. I'd love your take on if it really ever was, but it certainly isn't anymore, right? So in that scenario, like how do we retell our narrative as the marketing practitioner in charge of proving impact? What is the story we tell upward to show that what we are doing does matter when we can't connect the dots anymore?
So I think it's two things. I think one, we will need to return to classic marketing metrics, like back in the days of when billboards first became a thing. And I think a good thing now is this out-of-home advertising space has gotten big enough and more sophisticated where there are things now, like digital tactics are doing now that we can probably learn from. Back in the day, right, when billboards first came out, what marketers could do back then was launch a couple of billboards in targeted markets and then look at incremental lift in revenue within those markets, right? So if you have a Coca-Cola billboard on a certain highway in a certain city, then you can reasonably look at the grocery stores in like 10, 20, whatever mile radius of that billboard and see, hey, how are sales today versus before the billboard, right? That's a pretty direct correlation. I mean, you might not be accurate like down to the penny, but you'll be able to know like, oh, we've seen like a 10% lift in revenue. This is great. We're getting our return on investment. We can look at things more holistically, like looking at maybe spikes in website traffic, looking at increase in branded search. and kind of retroactively looking at, oh, did we have any big activations or campaigns in July 2025, right? You can look at those things and find the correlation. But the other piece, so two, is looking at your marketing efforts through a value on investment lens, right? So thinking a little bit less about ROI and a little bit more about VOI, right? The value on investment. So think about when you are investing in a marketing strategy or tactic. And by investing, I don't just mean spending capital, right? It's also time spent doing the copywriting, right? Time spent designing it, time spent strategizing. So I'm referring to money, people, time, effort. That's the investment, right? Looking at this investment and determining what value am I getting from that? And that value could be things like the way that marketing powers other business functions, right? So maybe it's a series of blog posts that answer questions that your customers frequently ask. And so the value there is not just whatever website traffic you're getting or whatever conversions you're getting, but also that value is less time spent from your customer support team answering those questions, less effort, right? Maybe they can get to the answer a lot more quickly because now they have additional resources that they can point customers to, right? So that is thinking more holistically about the value that you're creating and how it helps the other parts of your business.
I really like that perspective. And I think it aligns really well with some of what we've been wrapping our heads around as an agency that has to help all of our clients tell this individual narrative inside their businesses. And we've also been trying to take a holistic view, like you're saying, and thinking about when you try to directly attribute the impact of every little thing, you're also then, even if you're able to do that successfully, you're also then missing the impact of the synergy amongst those things. So we've been trying to think about, rather than trying to connect the dots on every individual little item we might do, every paid ad campaign, every automated email nurture, whatever it might be, rather than trying to directly prove the impact of those things, how do we bundle efforts that are aimed at achieving the same or similar goals, same or similar objectives, and measure progress toward that objective, which is typically a higher level KPI metric that is closer to revenue and then can satisfy the higher ups, the stakeholders who want to understand that what you're doing matters. So for example, rather than trying to really nail down, within AI-driven search engines, how often am I showing up? People are asking these weedy questions as this new technology comes to the forefront. They want to know, are we showing up? Are we showing up number one? Are we getting clicks through? And rather than trying to directly answer that, we try to back up and say, holistically, in all the places where search-like behavior, discovery-style behavior is occurring, are we showing up and are we getting quality traffic from those places? Are we getting quality leads from those places? So essentially, your KPIs for that search visibility work would be that you would probably see branded search traffic go up, because if you're showing up in more places, more people know who you are. It's kind of a proxy brand awareness measurement, right? So we're trying to say we're doing things where the rising tide is raising all the ships. I can't tell you which ship rose faster, which thing contributed most, but I can tell you that synergistically, all these things together are getting us where we need to go. So we've been trying to think about things from that perspective as well, which I think aligns really greatly with the VOI metric you were just talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, this is going to be a difficult transition, especially in our industry. So Wider, for those who aren't super familiar, we specialize vertically in B2B industrial. And so if you think about the personas that we work with often, it's very analytical. It's very engineering. There's a lot of numbers people involved. So to go to a value-based narrative over a revenue-based narrative with a lot more words and a lot fewer numbers, it's difficult. And I'm not going to pretend it's not going to be.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Amanda. This has been super interesting. And I am very excited to continue this conversation because you will be a speaker at Wider's conference, Experience Inbound, coming up here at the end of April, the 28th and the 29th in Milwaukee and in Green Bay. Can you give us just a tiny little preview of what we can expect in your talk there?
Yeah, I'm pumped. So I'm going to be talking all about zero-click marketing. And, I've been talking about it for a while now. We talked about it here, but I'm going to have newer research, newer frameworks, just a really new, fresh presentation on what this means for marketing leaders and what we can actually do about this, right? So it's going to have a lot of really good new tactics for people to try out.
Excellent. I can't wait. Thank you so much.
Me too. I'm pumped. It'll be fun.
Thanks for joining us on the ChangeOver Podcast. Remember to subscribe on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Wider.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. Let us know what you'd like to hear about next time by messaging Wider Group on social media. Thanks for watching.